Hello, healers. I'm Rosanne. Welcome to the Nature of Healing. And today we're going to discuss the threats we all face with the electromagnetic grid, the 4G and 5G frequencies. These are dark frequencies, harmful to all life, and part of a larger agenda to control humanity on multiple levels. And because there's so much to talk about, this will be part one of a two-part series. And for this part, we're going to focus on the hidden exposures that we face, as well as the solutions to protect ourselves. So I am honored to welcome Sharon Daphna and Gabriel Lazar, who are humanitarians, teachers of truth, weather warriors, spiritual warriors, and awake, and who are living, breathing examples of how we all need to step up and reclaim the truth about who we really are. That we are not only physical beings, but we are soul beings and spiritual beings. And we need to know this so that we can use the tools available to us to protect ourselves against what has become an ethereal warfare and move humanity forward. So these two have a radio show called The Human Frequency, and that's how they get their message out. They also are on YouTube and have a website called thechembow.com. And they have on this website a lot of information, workshops, videos, and they teach people how to protect themselves. So welcome, Sharon and Gabe.
Thank you, Rosanne. It's
Yeah.
really nice to meet you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Wonderful to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about all your information, how you got started. So let's just jump right in with why you are choosing this focus in your lives. What got you started?
Well, it wasn't even really a choice. It just kind of happened. And we found out about, well, we're going to be talking about negative frequencies and positive frequencies, but this all started with our concerns over geoengineering in LA, where we are both from, and we would see every day, day after day, chemtrail planes going back and forth, crisscrossing the sky, and we had horrible hazy days, and we felt sick all the time, and it was just completely depressing, and we knew it was bad for our health. And so we started looking into that and what was going on up there, and looking for a solution to it, which turned out to be orgone energy and orgonite. And so that's how it all started, was just from feeling horrible all the time and noticing the geoengineering, not even realizing how much of it was actually energetic. At the time, we were just worried about air pollution. So that's just how it began. And then pretty soon after learning about orgonite and seeing it clear the chemtrails up, we learned about how the war was actually energetic, and what was making the chemtrails stick was deadly energy. And that, in fact, that's what was making us feel so bad, and that so much of it was in our own homes. So that's how we got started on this whole journey.
Wow. So you were connecting
also,
dots.
Yes. And it all just kind of came together without us even realizing it.
And when we met, we kind of discovered this together, but when we met was late 2011. So that was right around the time that the drought, the engineered California drought, was starting. So we had that to deal with, and that was one of our main concerns at the time too. And and by the way, I just wanted to thank you for saying 4G and 5G, because people don't realize a lot of the times that it's not just 5G, like it's this new thing, but we already have 4G, which is just as bad.
Yeah, they're actually both bad, and they're both comparably bad. And people are always so worried that 5G is so much worse than 4G. But what you're looking at with 5G is you're having more transmitters that are shorter range. So they're more pervasive, but they are shorter range. And the 4G, there are fewer of them, but they are more powerful. So it's either way that you look at it, it's terrible for you. And the main thing that we need to do is get the stuff out of our houses. People don't realize that if they're worried about either 4G or 5G, if they've got a cell phone they're carrying around and using all the time, if they've got a Wi-Fi in their house, they've got the frequencies right there with them all the time. So distance is your friend. We learned that from Lloyd Burrell of electricsense.com, that the first thing you want to do is clean up your own home and your own life.
And non-participation is also key.
Why do it to yourself? If if it's bad for you, why do it?
Exactly.
We did an episode a while back called 5G Hysteria, where we point out a lot of these similarities between 4G and 5G and how it's really not, it's not the boogeyman that it's being portrayed.
Well, it's terrible. I mean,
it
there's
is,
no doubt.
but what we need to do is not participate in it, and then that takes the wind out of their sails.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we don't want it, why would they put up all the cell towers? You know, and people get upset that there's a new tower in their neighborhood, and they keep going up. Here where we live, there's been a couple of new ones. There's been 3 new ones in the last few months. And that's actually a lot for what a small population there is where we live. And the thing is that if people didn't ask for it, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, California is always the beta test market for the rest of the country. I mean, I think back when you had 2G, when we all had 2G, that was back in the early 2000s when we had the flip phone.
I didn't even have a cell phone back then. Yeah,
Neither did
I didn't either. But then, you know, it just became, you know, more prevalent, and they were doing testing on firefighters who were working on these or under these towers, these 2G towers, and they were experiencing symptoms. These studies were written up then, so they knew what these frequencies were doing then, and they've just increased the, you know, number and the number of cell towers. So it's like we can't get away from it right now. We have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah, that's why.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to that. But what I want to point out, though, is that what people don't realize is that the primary functions of cell phone towers are weather control and mind control. The communications function is absolutely secondary to the matter. It's not even up there.
And the reason for this push to get us all addicted to smartphones is also mind control. It's not about convenience. But the thing is, people have lost their basic functions because of this. Like the other day, our freeway on-ramp was closed. So we opened up our Thomas guide and found the next on-ramp and drove there. But most people would have their Waze app telling them where to go, their GPS telling them where to go. And we've lost basic skills like how to read a map. And now people become completely dependent on the devices. And there's other things too. I mean, think about it. There's an app for everything. But our minds used to be the apps for everything.
And now it's just straight to the phones.
And because we've lost our basic functions, that's causing people to become addicted, more and more addicted to the smartphone. Not to mention the addictive nature of EMF. People don't even realize that that's addictive. Our bodies change. Our electrical systems conform to that. And we become so used to it that it becomes weird to us when it's not there.
You can see how this snowballs.
So, I mean, the main purpose here is, yes, there's a dark agenda. We don't need the phones. 25 years ago, when you needed to know where to go, you looked at a map. You know, if you needed directions, you could ask someone for directions. Things have changed now to where people have become completely dependent on it. I mean, for everything.
Yeah, and what they don't know is that fiber optic cables could do all of this just the same. I mean, if President Nixon could call the moon, supposedly, if we landed on the moon, if he could actually call them, and they're still buying into that story.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
You know, if he used a regular landline then. So
okay, look at around you at humanity. You think these people are going to the moon? Do you think they ever could go to the moon? I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and we can talk about this.
I understand the point. The point is that, yes, if he could call such a long distance as the moon, which, okay, well, we'll talk about that later.
Well, if we're buying into that paradigm and that narrative, then we should be asking the question, why do we need all of this? Why do we need these frequencies that cause harm?
Right.
And there are studies out there, plenty of studies, and people can look them up. I've done a separate video showing that. I've written about this. So the military is already using these frequencies as something called active denial systems. It's crowd dispersal weaponry. So if they have already been approved by Congress and others to use this technology, this will be rolled out. People do not have, there is no public process that will prevent this from happening. So
that's true.
The thing that will prevent it from happening is by people ceasing their participation in it.
Right.
And that's the only way. You can't convince, you know, the military or the government or any other corporate entity to not do what is parasitic and life negating.
Right.
Haven't we figured that out by now?
I mean, and there's no
Seriously.
doubt that they're using energy weapons against us, whether it is the military or telecommunications companies or off-worlders that have been using them. This is a fact of life, is that our world is energetically extremely unhealthy. I mean, but at its core, it is healthy. The earth itself is a huge orgone generator, and we ourselves are huge orgone energy generators. And orgone energy is the life force energy discovered by Wilhelm Reich. So, in nature, that is what is all pervasive. And what is happening is these deadly energy sources are just being put all over the earth, and we're being encouraged to take them into our own lives to negate our own life force energy. So it's all just, as Gabe said, life negating.
Yeah, that's a great segue to talking about Wilhelm Reich and what you've
Mm-hmm.
discovered, and how do we apply his methods and what he was teaching.
Right. And he discovered the life force energy. He discovered first he was trying to find out, he started as a psychologist and a biologist, and he was finding the links between human illness and the mental state, and how our emotional state was connected with illness. So the human body is a natural orgone energy generator. We have an energetic system in our body. And when our orgone energy, our own life force energy, is contracted and stifled and stagnant, that's what leads to diseases like cancer and all kinds of other illnesses. And when it's an open, expanded state, it's moving freely and we're happy and well, that is what contributes to good health. So our physical health is directly connected with our mental health. And this is what he first discovered. And he didn't even really know the source of what he called emotional plague in the beginning days. And it was only through extensive research and field work with orgone energy that he realized that we were actually under energetic attack. And the culmination of his work did end up with finding an off-world source to all of this, which was what was his undoing ultimately. But in the beginning days, he was just looking at, why are we harming our children by stifling their natural creativity, their natural sexuality, which we all have. We teach kids to be ashamed of their bodies right away. And he was saying that's just wrong. We shouldn't be ashamed of our sexuality and our bodies. We should be open to sensation. And, if people are afraid of their own involuntary bodily reactions, such as in sexuality, the orgasm, people are so afraid that their bodies are doing these things involuntarily on their own. Their minds are getting all like mixed up with it, saying, why am I feeling this way? Oh, I can't control this feeling. We don't like what we can't control. So the human instinct was to armor the body and push aside those natural feelings. And that's leading to a lot of disease and just oppression in general in society.
Yeah. And
that's how we began.
It speaks to how they dumb us down, or how we allow them to dumb us down. Like what Gabriel was saying, we have this ability, we have orgone scalar energy. We are these scalar energy beings, if you want to call us that. And it's our spirituality. It's the connection between body, mind, soul, spirit. It's a connection to our divine creator, divinity. And this is what those who are controlling this, earth, don't want us to know, because that's our power. We have this power to heal ourselves. You have healed yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I have healed myself. Yeah. I know many people who have healed themselves, and it's coming to this understanding. It's shutting off that constant narrative that we hear on the television and through
television.
Television, yeah, and through the news media, through all. This is what we have to shut down first, and then, as Gabe said, start unplugging, basically.
Well, the thing is, we've already had this ability for thousands of years. The ancient cultures knew about this energy. They called it chi or prana, depending if you're in China or India. It's known by other different names, but Reich just discovered scientifically what these ancient cultures had already known about for millennia. And we used to use the word scalar to describe the energy, but we actually,
until recently, we
stopped using it because it's just too vague. It's a physics term that's used to describe any energy that goes through matter.
That's what it seems to be. It's not specific enough. That's why people talk about scalar energy weapons. And I actually just wanted to read you one of my very favorite quotes from Wilhelm Reich that totally goes with what we're talking about our own energy within us. And so Gabe had mentioned chi and prana. It's life force energy. And he's the first scientist that ever acknowledged it, maybe the only scientist that's ever really acknowledged this. And he says, and this is back in 1946, and in this book, Listen, Little Man, which is his plea to humanity to wake up. This whole book is a great book. Listen, let me put it in the screen so people can see it. Listen, Little Man. This is all about his own, it's the agony that someone goes through when they see people harming themselves over and over and over again, and has the solution and wants to help them. He says, I know what you call God really exists, but not in the form you think. God is primal cosmic energy, the love in your body, your integrity, and your perception of the nature in you and outside of you. And that's one of my very favorite quotes of his. He is the scientist that discovered God scientifically.
Yes, and it speaks to all people in all cultures and all religions and all nations, because Christ consciousness, whether you're a Christian or not, Christ consciousness is love. It's the love within us. It's kingdom of God is within us. And that is a perfect connection, perfect alignment to what Wilhelm Reich was teaching. So I think it's beautiful. You're spreading this message, and you're actually applying it so that we can physically protect ourselves, and we can take our power back that way. This is why everybody needs to know your information, your website, and hear you talk about this. You have your videos. Go ahead and continue to talk about this orgone energy and how you make it.
Well, orgone energy is within us. We have it already. It's within all living things. It's within rocks, minerals, the earth itself. And this is the energy of creation. And sometimes people have trouble with, if people are religious, they have trouble with this idea of it, because I had somebody say to me recently when I said, orgone energy is what gives us life. And she says, no, the Holy Spirit is what gives me life. And I said, yes, exactly, because it's the same thing. Yeah. So we get caught up in semantics, because some people think the Holy Spirit is a guy, they think that it's one of the persons of God, which this is not something that I believe in. I know that God is one, and God is everywhere, and it's an energetic force that is life. God is not a guy in the sky. So what I like about orgone energy is that I think that if you have an open mind to it, it doesn't matter what religion you come from, what background, and what culture, because it's the life force energy in all of us. What we were talking about earlier is how it's been negated. And if you believe in God and Satan, then you would know that the energy of death, DOR, which stands for deadly orgone radiation, and that's a Wilhelm Reich term. We just call it deadly radiation because deadly orgone radiation is a confusing term, which implies that orgone can go bad, which it doesn't. DOR is simply the opposite of OR, orgone energy. So you have duality, you have good and evil, you have God and Satan, orgone energy, and deadly radiation. And so because deadly radiation sources have been put throughout our communities in the cell tower grid everywhere, we take little orgone energy devices that we make, and we can explain how these work. And we put these little tower busters by the cell towers. The energy of orgone actually negates and neutralizes deadly radiation. And that's hard to believe out of something so small, but a little orgone energy generator actually puts out the opposing frequency and neutralizes the death frequencies.
Well, it was hard to believe for us, but we tried it almost 5 years ago, and the results have been absolutely amazing.
Right.
So we understand why there would be skepticism at first, because we had that.
Mm-hmm. And let me just explain briefly, since people are new to it. Orgonite is a very simple device. I'm going to show you a fancy one so you can see the parts, because in this one, let me put it in the camera here. In this one, you could see all the parts because it's all separated. There's a quartz crystal at the point, there's a copper coil, and there are a lot of very fine metal shavings. And they're all inside of a resin. It's a catalyzing resin. When you put the quartz crystals and the fine metal shavings in with the resin and it compresses upon them, it activates the orgone already in the crystals and metals, and it amplifies it through their piezoelectric properties. So the resin squeezes upon the metals and the crystals, and that activates and amplifies it. So when you put all this together in a device, it becomes an orgone energy generator. And although we already have orgone energy in us, if we're living near a cell phone tower, that's going to be fighting us constantly and making us sick, bringing down our consciousness and our physical health. So it's just a whole mind, body, spirit war going on.
Yeah, I use the analogy of a vitamin supplement for your consciousness. Yeah. When your health is under attack, you have to take a supplement or a vitamin to get better, because your system needs help again. It's the same thing with our energetic system. It's no different.
And in these little tower busters, this is the very cheap and easy version, and you can make these yourself. We have a tutorial video. If you go to our website and look up the orgone energy information, you'll see a tutorial video, and it's just basically the same thing. It's just fine aluminum shavings with quartz crystals and a copper coil and a catalyzing resin. It doesn't have to look like much, to work. And when you put the orgone generator near a DOR source, it neutralizes it. So although you still wouldn't want to be living near a cell tower, you do negate so many of the bad effects with the orgonite. And the results are seen in the sky first. Immediately you see a clearing of the atmosphere, because when you have deadly energy, that's what causes the hazy murkiness. That's what causes chemtrails and smog to linger. And when you have the healthy energetic field, the Earth's natural inclination is to clear that stuff up. And so that's what happens. And you can see it. And it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it's just
like
it
the
over
body.
And over again. Just like the body. Yeah. The body has inclination to be in balance and in health, just like nature. It's our connection to nature.
Exactly.
How?
Right, but it can't fight when there's so many things opposing it, just like the Earth, when there's so many towers being put up opposing the natural energy field, that we just need to flip
it back again. Exactly. We're in a war. It's an energetic war, and it's totally like under the radar. People don't even know what's happening.
And it's totally winnable. That's the funny thing about it. It's so simple to win it, but first thing we have to do is get over our addiction to the smartphones and the Wi-Fi and all of those things that we have voluntarily taken into our lives, as Sharon was saying earlier.
Yeah, and we can talk about where this is all leading. This is just one part of an agenda that goes to a transhumanist agenda, a transgender agenda.
Yes.
And
ultimately.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that in another time. I would love to talk to you more about that. So you're equating these devices that you're making, these orgonite devices, and I have several here, to Reich's orgone accumulator, right? Is that what he was using? Yeah. Is his accumulator?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, it has a similar idea behind it. And in the accumulator, he was collecting orgone energy from the atmosphere and concentrating it in one place through alternating layers of organic and inorganic material, which is what we use in the orgonite. The organic material being the resin, which is the polyester resin. It comes from oil. People don't like things that come from oil, but I don't see why we're demonizing a wonderful resource just because a few corporations are abusing it. And people do drive cars and they do drink out of plastic bottles, and they still seem to demonize the oil, but they're using it. So we have an organic source, which comes from petroleum, and we have an inorganic, which is the metallic element. And Wilhelm Reich was doing the same thing with the orgone accumulator to bring the orgone energy in. And he actually did have a proto-orgonite device called the Earth Bion Pad, which was similar to the orgone blanket, which one of his patients invented. The Earth Bion Pad would be earth cooked under pressure to create a little orgone energy device that could be put on a part of the body that needed healing. And that's very similar because we have in orgonite, we have the elements of it under pressure, which is the catalyzing resin squeezing on it. And he did the same thing by pressure cooking the earth into the Earth Bion Pad to put pressure on it and release more orgone. And one of his patients also invented a proto-orgonite device, the orgone blanket, which she used to heal her uterine cancer. Although she ultimately didn't survive because Wilhelm Reich had said that she needed her uterus removed, but another doctor said she didn't. And it did need to be removed because the cancer had advanced to that point. Had that been done, she probably could have made it. but she was relieving her symptoms dramatically with the orgone accumulator. And when traveling, she had made an orgone blanket with the alternating layers of the metallic and organic, which I think she was using wool and metal, and putting it on her uterus and finding relief even on the road. So yeah, these were some devices made in the 1940s that were what orgonite was ultimately based on.
Okay. So I want to hear more about when you gift these orgonite devices under cell towers in your area of California. You're still living in California, so where people are fleeing California out of fear because they don't know how to protect themselves. They don't understand what's happening with the laws. There's so many things happening in California right now.
There's no escape.
Yeah, there is no escape. I always say, wherever you go, there you are, right?
It's the same thing.
Good luck. Thanks for watching.
So yeah, that's what other people would like
everywhere.
I'm sure people would wonder.
We've traveled far and wide gifting orgonite, not just in California, but Oregon, Washington, Nevada. We've even distributed orgonite in Arizona and New Mexico. We've gone many, many places. And we've determined that everywhere is exactly the same as everywhere else. Every city is exactly the same as every other city. Gifting a city to us, it's just become like one is exactly like the other is like the other. Sometimes I'll be in Seattle and think, this looks just like Oakland. Or we'll be in Las Vegas, and it's actually not too different from San Diego or any of these other places. Every city is set up the exact same way. The towers are in the same places, and people ask us how we find the towers. They're just there. You just go. There they are. And we do grids. So our goal is to cover an entire city. When that's not possible, if the city's too big, we do a portion of it and record it so we know later what we've done. So when we go back, we can do more. But yeah, they're all the same. I would say probably the highest amount of towers we've ever seen anywhere was in Las Vegas. I would say that was Seattle was pretty bad too. And Portland, Oregon is terrible.
Vegas
was the worst. So yeah, that's all the same. You just gotta protect yourself.
I see you as these spiritual warriors out on this great mission. And I mean, how are you accumulating helpers with you? I mean, are other people doing this too? How do other people get involved?
Well, we've had some help at times. Well, we've gifted with other people here and there. We had a helper who drove us around back when we didn't have a car. When we lived in LA, we did gifting by bike, and we had a friend who was an orgonite gifter who drove us really far. I mean, he drove us hundreds of miles to gift. So we've had help in the past, and sometimes we'll go with a friend and when we visit them in their town, but mostly we do it alone. And we encourage people to do it only with someone they really trust and keep it on the down low. You don't want people to know where you put them. It's really a disorganized effort. An unorganized effort.
Well, it has to be that way. Otherwise, it just gets sabotaged. And this one's tricky, but you have to leave all wireless devices behind to gift orgonite because that is their means of getting to you while you're doing it. And it happens with us very early on.
Explain what you mean by getting to you, because people think they're running us off the road, but it's
that's really interesting. Go ahead, Gabe.
It's all done energetically. It's all done etherically. It's not, no one's taking an SUV and trying to get you to fall in a ditch and crush you. It doesn't work that way. But no, what I'm talking about is that if you have one of those devices, that will be used to track you, and it will be used to zap you, even if it's off.
And you're not going to feel good. I mean, you're going to start to get a headache. You're going to start to feel sick. They target you. Everybody knows where you are based on the cell phone or your GPS. We don't have a GPS in the car. I do think it's a good idea to have a cell phone turn it off and wrap it in foil so you can't be tracked. Because if you have an emergency or something, we have one. We have one of these $3 a month plans, so we have it for emergencies. So if anything happened, we got a flat tire or something, we could turn it on and call for help. But it's off, it's wrapped, and that's the way we do it. And we also use these little devices called sucker punches. That's a little crystal wrapped in a Mobius coil that you turn on. It has a little 9-volt battery, and it seems to scramble the surveillance. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but it's a type of orgone energy device that I think targets the surveillance signal. Although I'm telling you, the guy that makes them, he doesn't know how they work either. They just seem to work.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows how they work.
They just do.
But the main thing is to just not have the tracking devices.
Yeah, and it's essential to have them wrapped, not just off. That might seem excessively
No, it's not
paranoid,
excessive.
but we have experience with this.
Oh, and let me tell you another thing. If you linger under a cell tower too long, you will get zapped big time. We were in Orange County gifting, and we didn't even realize we were under the tower. It was like across the street and we couldn't see it behind a tree. We had to park for a minute and figure out where we were going. And we started to have a fight out of nowhere. And we were getting really edgy and angry. And then we said we just got to move on. As soon as we pulled out of the space and we saw the tower and we gifted it in a bush, then all of a sudden everything got better. We just had to get away from it. So, you just have to be aware of these things while gifting orgonite.
And this has happened to us so many times over the years. It's just, we try and pass on our knowledge to other people so that they can do this, because we can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
We can't. We've done a lot. We have a nice line from Seattle, through the Southwest.
The entire 5
Santa
freeway,
Fe.
the entire 5 freeway from Seattle all the way down to San Diego, as far south as we could get. We didn't go through the Mexican border. We haven't been into Canada either. I can say, though, we do have orgonite in both of those places from other people taking it there.
Wow.
But yeah, we can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
So we rely on
of course
other
not.
people to take care of their part of it. And the best way they can do that is by looking at our knowledge that we give to them and not making the same mistakes that we made.
Yeah,
so they
we had
just
to
have an
learn.
easier time.
Yeah, we had to learn from experience. Took years.
Yeah, this is all what life is about, isn't it? About experience. It's not about reading what's in a book necessarily. It's about your own experience and learning from it. And you two are examples, and other people can, choose to embody that and make that their own life purpose or whatever, or just use it to protect themselves. Because if we want to procreate, if we want to keep this species moving forward, we need to learn how to protect ourselves, our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And this is what this is all about. Like you said, it's mind control. They're already using it as mind control. So what's coming next is just more so. People are going to be experiencing all kinds of symptoms related to that. And just what you described as fighting, just an argument, nobody would think that would be initiated by something like this, but definitely it is. And people have to be aware of that, even to know that it exists.
Yeah, well, DOR is a very agitating frequency. It's the frequency of death. And when you're looking at the DOR can be different types of deadly radiation. It could be nuclear radiation. It can be EMF. It's anything that's like a really, really fast frequency, very fast, that disrupts your own natural rhythm. And it's so agitating. People don't understand why they're fighting more. There's more drama these days. They're on their phones, Facebooking each other, having fights, via text. And they don't even realize that so much of this isn't even them doing it. It's just something manipulating their own mind's frequencies. When you put that thing away, if you're not feeling well, if you're feeling just inexplicably depressed or down, just turn it off, put it as far from you as possible. I say turn it off, wrap it in foil, and put it away. I don't even use it. We have a corded landline in our house. You will be amazed how much better you feel. Plus wireless internet, that's another one that's in your house. Turn it off. Go hardwired if you can. If you can't, at least turn it off when you're not using it or when you're sleeping. These things make a big difference. And regarding 5G, people are really scared about that. That is all up to you. It's short-range transmitters. When you bring it into your house, there's going to be 5G internet. If you're bringing that in, then you are having a Wi-Fi transmitter in your house, putting the 5G throughout your house. Well, how about if you don't do that? Go with the cable internet, use a hardwired modem, and use Ethernet cables rather than a Wi-Fi. Then you don't have it in your house. It's short range, remember, so you can keep it out. And if you don't like 5G, then don't use a cell phone, because you are putting it in your own pocket.
You see, if you talk to us or listen to us or are exposed to any aspect of our work for any lengthy period of time, there are two main themes that come up all the time. One of them is you'll see this duality coming up, OR versus DOR, positive ionization versus negative ionization.
Oh, and by the way, that's the opposite of what you think. Negative ions are good and positive ions are bad.
Yes.
to add more confusion into the mix.
Right.
Negative ions are healthy, make you feel good.
They're from the earth.
Yeah.
You'll see the duality come up in a variety of different ways. And the other thing that you'll see coming up all the time is so many times we're doing this to ourselves.
Oh, we're always doing it to ourselves.
Yeah, that's a more or less constant thing.
Including,
and 5G is a perfect example of that.
And this includes what you were saying about Californians fleeing California because of laws. Again, we're all doing this to ourselves. You got to know whose law you follow. And this is another discussion because it's a really big discussion, but because we are not obeying God's law, which is the natural law, that's if you're not a Christian or a Jewish person or somebody that, reads the Bible and says God is God, that you have a different way of looking at it, it's the same thing because there are natural laws that govern nature, that govern all beings on earth, but we're not following those. And that's ultimately the biggest problem. We're following a man-made law that could change. And what is illegal isn't necessarily wrong, and what's legal isn't necessarily right. There's plenty of things that are illegal that are actually good for you, like medical marijuana. That's illegal in a lot of places. It's legal in California. Apparently, the county we live in has made it illegal now. It's very confusing when you're following man's law that can change it at a whim.
Mm-hmm. What's legal today will be illegal tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And who decides? That's the question. Why is one authority capable of deciding for everybody else what the truth is? Well, yeah, exactly.
Do you want to know who that authority is? And this is the saddest part of all. We live in a democracy. We decide. We are deciding for ourselves. We're all pooling it together. Out of many, we've become one. Instead of out of one, God, the creator, we've become many. We've done it the opposite. So what we've done is we've said, God doesn't exist. So we are going to be the God and we're going to make our choices. But there's a whole lot of us here. So we're going to vote.
It's chaos.
So we're going to vote. We're all going to put our voices together and we're going to be our own God. So then we say, well, we got to have someone in charge. So we're going to vote for this guy. All of a sudden we've become God, usurping God's power. Then we voted for our servant. And then, whoa, look just what happened. That servant became our master. Do you see how twisted everything is?
The master claims to have rights to give us, which are not rights at all. We are born with our rights.
Exactly.
Right. And these rights are privileges. But go ahead, Gabe.
But we give up those rights when we turn away from God and go to the man-made system, which is a counterfeit of God's perfect law. But we can turn back at any time. And that's the thing. When you turn back and start obeying God's law, that law never changes. It's written in stone.
And this is why I would love it if people who are very religious wouldn't think that what we're doing with orgone energy is witchcraft, because indeed it is not. We're using the energy of God, exactly what God gave us. He gave us dominion over the earth. And that means to take care of it. That doesn't mean to become the false rulers of it. He gave us this earth to take care of it. And I wish that people wouldn't think this was witchcraft, because the real witchcraft is our legal system. And that's a big discussion we could talk about another day. But they are actually participating in witchcraft and necromancy and bringing the dead to life. Whereas what we're doing is we're just taking the beautiful gift that God gave us, and we're just spreading it around and trying to bring back the balance of the earth.
Well, they're not just participating in it. They are getting us to voluntarily do the same thing.
Well, it's a mess. So we just have to, before we go into a big discussion of how screwed up our legal system is, just to know this, that we are ruled by God. We are living men and women, and God gave us this earth to take care of it and to use the resources, but to use them responsibly. And this is, again, why I say there's no reason we can't use petroleum products to make orgonite. We're using the resource responsibly, and we're driving in our hybrid car to gift them, and we're doing the best we can.
And also the amount of petroleum that's used to make these is far less harmful to the environment than the cell tower arrays that are being put everywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it that way.
Well, I would say that the invisibility of the pollution is what makes it hard for people to understand.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to explain.
And the invisibility of the solution.
It's hard to understand.
Right. And I mean, that's why people don't acknowledge their own spirit, their metaphysical and spiritual part of themselves. They don't see it. And we have to start changing our perception, our perspective to really grasp what's happening on an individual level. But really, like you said, we're all one, we're all connected. We need to work together and move ourselves forward. And I wanted to ask you next about geoengineering, because it's connected to this. Obviously,
Oh yeah.
when you gift, you see the clouds dissipate. How
Yes.
is this also being used as part of this agenda or matrix, or what are you seeing in gifting?
Well, geoengineering, whether it's man-made or off-world, which I can tell you, it's the big programs that are going on worldwide that are just running constantly. Those are not human in origin, and this is something that we had to come to figure out over the years, because we used to think it was a military operation. But what's going on here is a desertification of this green planet. And the agenda behind it, wherever the source is, the agenda is, and the result is desert, drought, and polluted atmosphere. And what we found is that the bad guys, they want us to have scarcity. They want us to be worried about food and water, and they want us to live under pollution, and they want us to think it's our fault, you see, because we caused it by global warming. You know, they want us to think that we created global warming, when in fact, all of the climate imbalances on the earth are a result of manipulating the weather this way. But the chemtrails themselves that you see in the sky, that hazy murkiness, is a byproduct of the energetic war. So ultimately, the desertification and geoengineering of our world is done through deadly energy, like the gridding of cell towers over the land. The result of that is drought, desert, and pollution. And the reason for that is the deadly radiation is a positively ionizing energy, and positive ions inhibit cloud formation, and they also inhibit the Earth's natural ability to clear pollution. Whereas when we neutralize it with orgone energy, that is a negatively ionizing technology, which means clean air. It encourages the Earth's natural cleaning properties, and it also encourages the hydrogen bonding of water molecules, so you have rain. And also, because it's life force energy, it causes increased plant growth, because that's the stuff of life. Like Wilhelm Reich found when he was doing his experiments in the desert in near Tucson, Arizona in the 50s, that when he used his cloudbuster, which was an orgone energy device to move orgone energy in the atmosphere, that he created rain with it. But even before the rain started, green grass grew all around him in the desert before the rain. So that shows you that the life energy is connected with plant growth. And then he saw pollution lift, the smog, he called it, in quotes, by the way, the smog, because he knew that the smog was lingering because of bad energy, and it was a result of deadly energy. It wasn't necessarily a pollution in itself. But the smog lifted, and then clouds formed, and it rained. And I actually have some examples from his books I can look at and tell you about. But that is ultimately what the geoengineering is. It is off-world.
I want to hear your example of bringing rain in.
Okay, well, we could talk about that.
Yeah, well, I just want to say first that, you know, people tend to fixate on the trails, the chemtrails as they're called colloquially, and all of the geoengineering activist groups will encourage that fixation.
They fixate on heavy metals, which we don't actually know if that's what's up there. We just think it is.
Right. But the trails themselves are just incidental. That's what people don't understand. It's about the energy, not the trails themselves. The trails are, you know, like litmus paper, how you dip it in a liquid and you can tell whether it's acidic or basic. It's kind of like that. By looking at what the trails are doing at any given time in any part of the sky, you can tell what the energetic state of that part of the atmosphere is. And we have lots of photos all over our website that show what happens when the atmosphere is positively ionized and when the trails are spreading out and creating that murky, flat looking two-dimensional sky, versus when the atmosphere is healthy and negatively ionized and the trails are starting to go into corkscrew formations and break up. And there's lots of lines between them, and sometimes they just evaporate
Well, I would encourage your listeners to look at the website and go to the Best of blog. If you look at the Orgone Energy section, there's something called Best of blog. You can see different places we've gifted, and we have before, during, and after photos of the sky. So what we find is that when we use the orgonite and we grid an area, especially putting a lot of pieces out in one day, it creates a dramatic energy shift. So if a sky started out murky and polluted, then you start to see that pollution lift. And like Gabe said, the chemtrails break into pieces. They don't stick, they don't linger, they break into pieces and fall apart. And then you see that the haze starts to dissipate and clouds actually start to form. Little puffy clouds kind of form out of it. And you'll see spiral shapes because orgone energy is a spiraling wave, and it's moving from the earth up into space. And by the end of the day, after all the little puffy clouds form, you'll usually see the sky completely clear. And it's a regular pattern. We've seen it, I would say, hundreds and hundreds of times. And if it's supposed to rain, rain is supposed to happen, then once that clears and the sky is clean, the rain clouds will come in. If it's not supposed to rain, it's just supposed to be a clear day, it will just clean up and you'll have blue sky. So what it does is it just removes the disruption to the natural weather. And if you go to Best of blog, you can see stuff we've done since 2014 all over California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. There are so many examples of the exact same thing over and over and over again in various climates.
I love that. And I have done that with my little devices here. I've had these for several years. These aren't probably the best type that I have. It's just a coil and a resin. There's no crystal in there. There's no shards of metal.
Oh yeah, it needs to have some metals.
Yeah,
so but it has copper in there, so it is copper. Doing something.
It's doing something.
So I've taken 4 of these and I put them around my yard at one time, and I saw the clouds break up. So it does.
That's great.
Even if you have something as little as that, but
yeah, it's very powerful energy.
And the thing is, even the pyramid shape itself. You'll see over mountains sometimes when lenticular clouds form, which are those very flat, they look like UFOs. Yeah. There's no orgonite there necessarily. It's just the shape of the mountain that is a director of the life force energy. And a lot of these mountains, they have quartz. They have quartz within them.
Would you like me to share a picture of one that happened just the other day?
Please, because people point to these online and say that they're cloaked UFOs.
That's not true. And actually, if you watch them form, you can, see, we're sky watchers, so we're watching it. And we've seen plenty of UFOs, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to share a picture that happened just the other day. There was a few lenticular clouds right by our house. And let's go to share. All right.
Yeah. For every good thing that happens in the sky, there's several pieces of disinfo waiting to downplay it or put a negative spin on it. So, yeah.
Can you see this picture?
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you see these little ripples and how it's kind of round shaped?
Mm-hmm.
This is forming a lenticular cloud, and it's formed by the energy vortex of orgone energy. And here, this one is more developed. You can see it's really round, and it just whips around. The energy whips it around, and it has the ability to lift pollution out of the atmosphere, and it's just whipping around all the water molecules. And here's a really soft one. This is one just barely forming. This is just from the other day. So you see these kinds of things. And I can also show you one that is from years ago. This was one of the first ones we ever saw that we made with orgonite. And in April of 2014, we had our first rain in a long time after making our first batch of orgonite. And after 1 week, they did a major attack, to try to stop the beautiful sky, because we had these beautiful puffy clouds again. Everything was getting back to normal. By the end of the day, as the result of the cleanup from the orgonite we had made, this is just in the flatlands of Hollywood, we had lenticular clouds forming literally over our street. I mean, these were literally over our house. And at sunset, it looked really cool. And yes, it looks like the Starship Enterprise, but it formed in the sky. I saw it forming. It wasn't a UFO, but that's what happened after just 1 week of working with orgonite at the very, very beginning. So that's what the example of lenticular clouds that we were talking about.
Wow, that is clear evidence to me. People need to see to believe that that's it.
And there's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of examples like that on our website. If you go to thechembow.com and you just go to the photo gallery, there are some pictures there with basic explanations. So when you see weird things in the sky, then you don't need to react with fear. The website shows examples of unhealthy skies that are geoengineered with very little orgone energy to show you what that looks like. And then I have examples of how orgone energy acts on the geoengineering. And all these are taken by us out in the world, doing what we do. And by the way, the really, really bad skies, they happen on the days where we're not feeling well, where we're unable to activate the orgone in ourselves. A lot of what we're doing here with orgonite is actually healing our own selves so that our own energy fields are stronger and create a positive and clean world. So the orgonite alone will do it. It's an energy device, but when we use it to clean up our own energy fields, it's remarkable how much more of an effect it has. Like back in September of 2014, we had these phenomenal skies for a month because we had turned off the Wi-Fi in August. We stopped using Wi-Fi. And then in early October, we had a friend stay over and we turned the Wi-Fi back on for him. And the next day, I couldn't sleep all night. And the next day, we woke up and there were chemtrails again. So it's our own energy fields that are being also cleaned up by the orgone energy. I want to read you a quote about that from Wilhelm Reich because he figured out the same thing. And it's nice to see. I'll pull out my book. It's nice to see that the results that we have are mirroring his results. So even though he didn't have orgonite, he was using orgone energy in the atmosphere.
It's perfect example what you're saying of what I know as a healer myself, that what we see on the outside is just a reflection of what we're experiencing on the inside. So that is a great example. Thank you for that.
And our earth is responding to us. So when we are addicted to cell phones and we're taking in deadly radiation all the time and we're eating junky food and all the things that people do, lowering our consciousness, we will have worse skies. We will have more chemtrails. If you're a cell phone addict, you're going to have more chemtrails than if you've given it up. And Wilhelm Reich makes the correlation right here. It's called emotional desert because a lot of what he was working on was the emotional state of humans. And this is sort of near the end. This is in the 1950s when he was doing his orgone operations in the desert. And this comes from his core volumes, which you can get from the Wilhelm Reich Institute. I'm going to show it to you here. You can order these volumes online. It's all his published data from his work in the desert. Emotional desert. Man himself is responsible for desert making and desert breaking. Man has the tools of knowledge and the tools of technology at his disposal today to combat desert development and even to turn existent deserts back into green, rich pastures for man and animal alike. The first obstacle in the way of OROP desert, which means orgone operations in the desert to clean it and bring back the rain, the first obstacle in the way of OROP desert is not the outer desert, but the inner emotional desert of man. And so he's making that correlation between our emotional desert in our hearts and the desert of our earth. And when we can heal that emotional desert within us, then we can heal our world. So he figured that out, that it's all about us.
Mm-hmm. And this is what all of those geoengineering groups will never, ever talk about, and will actively suppress this information because this is the key for us to overcome all of these problems. It's the solution to pollution and a whole lot more than that.
And in contact with space, this is more of the same type of work in the desert. This is where he figured out the off-world source, because so what we have to understand is that we're under attack as humans. Our own consciousness is under attack, and by attacking our consciousnness, they're able to use us to create, with our creative potential, the world they want. They want global warming, and all they have to do is tell us it's happening, and then we manifest it.
Because we believe it.
Mm-hmm. Even though the global solar minimum is here. I mean, the sun is dying, apparently. I mean, there's less and less sun. There's more sunspots on the sun. We're reaching a global solar minimum. And so we're cooling. We're heading toward potentially
cooling.
A mini ice age.
Well, this has a lot to do with the the spread of orgonite around the planet, because
Yes.
that brings it, negative ionized atmospheres are cooler than positively ionized ones.
Absolutely. And actually the geoengineering through deadly radiation is causing a lot of heat up, whereas orgone energy cools it down and makes it wet. So by doing this, by bringing back the balance, we're actually eliminating the threat of global warming if it ever was a threat. And I would say actually, if we were not to do this, it could be a problem because, like Gabe said, positive ionization, all the cell towers, they make it hotter, they make it more droughty, more desert-like, and they cause the pollution to linger. But I do think that this is an off-world war. And I just wanted to share just one more thing, because this is another correlation. Wilhelm Reich saw UFOs retreat. He thought they were stars in the sky, but he saw them retreat when he was using his cloudbuster in the desert. And we too have experienced a lot of UFO activity since starting to work with Orgone. And what he says is about the film The War Between the Worlds, a 1950s movie. He says, on January 9th, 1954, I saw the Wells film War Between the Worlds, a rather realistic approach to the planetary emergency. The film still adhered to the earthly idea that war consisted in a noisy bang-bang of shooting machinery, that war upon the earth waged by beings from outer space would produce the sight of green arms, clawed hands, and other products of human nightmare fantasies. The film was ignorant of the insidious, noiseless, emaciating nature of a war of attrition, drawing off life energy from a planet covered with green, seething with living beings. However, the presentation of the landings was realistic, and so was the crumbling of buildings. We may be right in admitting that the crumbling was filmed with high-speed acceleration of an actually nearly invisible activity. The panic shown in people was due rather to the acceleration of events than to the events themselves. In reality, the rocks were already crumbling in 1952 in the USA, but no one seemed to pay attention to it, since the process was so very slow and the people who noticed it were so very evasive or fearful to tell. So he was talking about the energetic war, that the war on our earth is not going to be like a big shooting war, but it's an energetic war. It's slow and insidious.
Mm-hmm. And that was over 60 years ago now, but it's the same thing going on today, just in a slightly different form.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
We have EMF emitting devices now, whereas back then there were different things causing.
Well, nuclear radiation was a huge one back then.
Yep.
You know, and so back then there were no cell phones, and the thing is that all this has to be done at a pace that humans can understand. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't even used to see chemtrails, but I don't think that means they weren't there, because I've seen old paintings that had skies in them that would freak out the geoengineering people today. So, you know, this stuff has been around.
Yeah, the boots on the ground type war is a distraction, and it's a way. It's a way to cull part of the population too. So that's what I think.
Because protesting isn't going to get rid of the chemtrails, you know.
No.
But putting out orgonite will.
And we've shown it. And here in California, I mentioned that we met each other right around the time that the drought was starting at the end of 2011. And virtually as soon as we started gifting orgonite and putting them around cell towers, even just from a few small operations in late 2014 and early 2015, that winter is when the drought started to break. Now, of course, the media, doing what they do naturally, hung on to the drought propaganda for another couple of years before they finally had to admit in April of last year that it was over.
And now they're saying it's happening again, but it's not true, because we've already had an extremely rainy fall. It's not even winter yet. And we have many feet of snow already in the Sierras. And, you know, California depends on that snowpack for water because they haven't figured out how to drill for primary water. That technology was suppressed. So we depend on that snowpack because of that, but we have it.
But the problem we're facing here is that, like I was saying earlier, they lie to us and say that we're in a terrible drought, and people just believe it without questioning.
They just do.
They lie and say, oh, 2018 was the hottest summer on record,
it was
when
so
in
mild.
reality it was one of the most mild.
It was mild.
So again, it's that it's the fact that people's brains have been turned to mush by these smart devices, and they don't have that ability to look out or step out and see what the temperature is like. They're just looking at the iPhone and it tells them that it's 112. And whereas if they stepped out and felt what the air felt like, they would feel, oh no, it feels more like 85 or 90, which is not pleasant. Don't get me wrong. That is not pleasant. Anything above 75 is terrible. But you would at least start to see that they're lying by 10 degrees, 20 degrees. We've caught them lying by as much as 25 degrees over what it actually was. And
It's important that we understand that the correlation between what's going on in our own minds and what's going on in the atmosphere and the planet. And Wilhelm Reich found that was the same case. I'm finding that's the case, is that the more positive we are, the more we're utilizing our own life force energy, whether by gifting orgonite or simply by removing the noise and restoring our life force by getting rid of EMF. We could create that world, that the beautiful world, the clean world.
This is what we're meant to do. We're meant to spread the truth and, showcase the lies. And Wilhelm Reich would be so proud of you if you were still here. And I'm sure he's very happy. Have you thought about this connection between what you're seeing with, this circular cloud formation and the orgonite energy and what Native American tribes have done in their powwow circles to create the same effect?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I actually could recommend a film that you can look at on YouTube. It's called Healing Mother Earth's Sacred Sites, and it's all about rain dance ceremonies and medicine wheel ceremonies that were done by Rainbow Thunderheart in various sacred places around the earth. In the main one that's featured is Big Bear, California, where he came up there in 2004 and ended the drought with the use of medicine wheels, crystal medicine wheels. And he had a bunch of people get together. There were Aztec Indians from Los Angeles and a bunch of people from Big Bear that danced together and did the ceremony. And they brought a couple of feet of snow within a couple of days. And there had been a drought. There had been no precipitation. And through doing these ceremonies, they brought back the rain. We met Rainbow Thunderheart very briefly at a conference where he came up to, I was on a panel, and he came up to us and said that our work was like his work. And then when I looked at the video, I saw the same spiraling clouds formed by the ceremonies that we have with orgonite. So absolutely, it's the same energy.
Wow, is all I can say. Wow, that's so great.
Definitely check out that film.
Yeah, well, this is just an example of how we can, correct the message that's out there about that's not Christian or that's not biblical. We're all one. We're all under the same life force, energy, and which is divinity, which is our divinity. And if we just say a few words that connect those dots, we don't have to get bogged down in the details that separate us and divide us, because that's exactly what these powers want. They want us divided.
Exactly.
Fighting.
Yep.
So, and
that's the purpose of religion. It's a mind control. I read the Bible and I follow God's law, but I don't consider myself to be a religious person. It's very divisive, because one religion will say this, take this part of the Bible and throw this part away, and another will say, well, this part actually means this, which isn't what it says. They're just trying to create divisions, all these different denominations, when we're all the same.
Exactly.
And that's also seen to a lesser extent with all of these geoengineering activist websites that are just there to fill people with fear and offer no solutions, and in fact actively suppress orgone energy.
Absolutely, because that's against their business policy. I mean, they don't stay in business. Geoengineering groups are businesses. Let's face it. They don't stay in business. The problem goes away. That's
exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because I found you a couple years ago, and then you just came back into my stream kind of recently, and I'm following you both. Not following you, but we're all equals. I like to distinguish that. There's no followers and no leaders. We're all just presenting our truths. And I really love what you're saying and the information you're getting out. And I noticed that, you talked about how this energy, working with this energy, affected you. It's basically changed your lives. And this is what everybody needs. We need to change our lives. We need to look at what this can do for us. And it's our connection to ourselves. Really, it's reconnecting to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yes, you're right. And it takes courage. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people just don't have the courage. They are so dependent on that system There's an image, an illustration in Listen Little Man, where it shows a man standing there with a shackle around his ankle and a chain, and there's a break in the chain. Yeah, she'll show it.
It's really funny. By the way, the pictures in this book are really, really cool. In this book, Listen Little Man by Wilhelm Reich. There's a lot of great illustrations in here by William Steig, who was also a cloudbuster operator.
William Steig was an illustrator. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's chain is broken. He's
Amazing.
Like, oh my God. Now what?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really
I don't
cool
have my
pictures
chain
in here.
anymore. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's chaos now. I have to have someone to boss me around, someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to let God boss me around. God can tell me what to do. I got someone to tell me what to do. I don't have to be in charge, you know?
Yeah, one world government is just fine as long as God is the one in charge.
Yeah, but if it's a bunch of satanic lunatics, then it's no good.
That's when everything goes wrong. That's when everything goes wrong. And we have an obligation, and I'm paraphrasing a Wilhelm Reich quote, is that life is surrounded on all sides by hostility. This puts us under an obligation. And we felt that obligation very strongly 5 years ago, and we feel it just as strongly now. And we're just putting information out there. We got it all on the website, all on the blog. If people want to take it and go with it, nothing would make us happier.
But just so you know, I started out as one of those activists because I didn't know what the heck I was doing back then. So, in 2013, before we discovered Orgone energy, we were protesting and doing all that stuff. It doesn't do anything, but we were totally doing that back then. And I was also hysterical about the heavy metals up there and all that. And then as soon as we figured out orgonite, then the fear just went away overnight. I mean, it was like that. It's unbelievable how it changes your life.
Yes. And you start seeing truth from fiction. You start realizing there's controlled opposition in your movement, and you have to be very careful, like you were saying, who to trust, and you have to trust yourself.
So much of it. There's so much of it. It's absolutely everywhere. It's like a castle with the several lines of defense. You got the moat and the drawbridge, then you've got the portcullis. It's like there's many different levels of protection,
right,
that will keep you from finding what it is you need to find.
And
it's up to us to get through those layers and find what the truth is.
Well, the biggest, most important thing that I can recommend, that I know people don't want to do it, but stop using cell phones. It should just be for emergencies. But, people shouldn't be using the internet on those. They should be doing their browsing on a computer, preferably with a hardwired connection. Even Wi-Fi is better for you than looking at the cell phone. I really would love to see people stop. And Gabe showed me a funny article yesterday that Vitamin Water is doing this. They have a challenge that you can sign up for to go 1 year without a cell phone or without a smartphone. But they'll provide you with a dumb phone from like 1996, so you have communication. But so it's the Vitamin Water challenge to stop using the smartphone. I had to laugh because I said, I can join this contest and win.
Oh yeah.
Then I had to laugh because I saw
$1,000
Yeah, but you know how you have to join the contest? You need to either tweet about it or put it on Instagram. Well, I'm out of the contest. I don't use those things. You got to use a smartphone to do that crap.
Like Kramer says, I'm out of the contest.
I mean, I took a look at those. I had to laugh because to join the contest, you have to be like a smartphone addict to begin with. So obviously I would win it, but I wouldn't know how to make a tweet if I wanted to. I mean, I'm very good with computers. I'm very good with technology, but I'm not good with technology that harms me. I avoid it.
You wouldn't be master of your domain.
I wouldn't be master of my domain.
No, it's more controlled messages, controlled opposition, reconnecting you to that ball and chain in a different way.
That's right. And, we say it over and over and over again, ad infinitum. And, I kind of know people aren't going to do it, but
I wish people would stop using them.
You must stop using the smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it again. Stop using the smartphone.
They're not going to. I really wish people would, because you wouldn't be absolutely amazed at how positively your life changes when you don't use one. Although it seems kind of like a big step because you've become addicted to it. If you're old enough to remember a day when you didn't have one, try to think back, how did you survive? You did. You somehow survived without it. I mean, how did you find a vegan restaurant without the Happy Cow app? I mean, I would just look it up online at home and write down the address. It's not that hard to do. you know?
Yeah, when I go somewhere, I print out instructions on how, directions from MapQuest, and I have them with me because you never
That's
know when
better.
things are going to break down. Yeah,
Good.
but I do have to move to this next level. Probably that's why I'm talking to you, is to show me how to do this, because I do have a smartphone. I'm plugged into Wi-Fi. My son needs it, and in quotes, but
For
he's
video games.
well.
Just, I tell you this, they're faster on an Ethernet connection. I used to play online video games years ago. I was way into video games. Not to say that was the healthiest habit, but this is over 10 years ago. And I did it hardwired because my Wi-Fi wasn't working very well with it. I didn't know any of this stuff back then. Everything can be done hardwired.
It's kind of like starting over.
Yeah.
You have to go back in time.
We've let things get so out of control with it. They're putting wireless in Kleenex dispensers now, for crying out loud.
Wave your hand over it. There comes a Kleenex.
There will be wireless in literally everything until we say at what point is enough.
How come I'm going to the health food store and in the co-op in my little community, and I go into the bathroom, and when I need a paper towel, I have to wave my hand in front of the thing, or if I need soap, I have to just hold my hand there? Shouldn't they also know that you can push a little lever and a little lever here and not get radiated? But people just don't know. So Wi-Fi is just everywhere, and anything that operates that way, it's constantly emitting, constantly.
Well, they want us to,
and it adds up.
Yeah, and
it adds up. It's not just the cell phone towers. It's however many of those there are, plus however many smart meters there are, plus however many Wi-Fi routers there are, plus however many smartphones there are. It just, it piggybacks on itself.
I remember the chairman of the telecommunications group was saying, and I put him in a video recently that's going to be coming out, but he said something about once 5G is deployed, everything will be connected to it. Nothing will not.
Oh yeah, the Internet of Things.
The Internet of Things.
It's called the Internet of Things. Yeah.
Yes, of things.
Right. Because, so don't get those things.
Right.
See, we don't buy anything.
And
we
they
have
want
very few things.
Right. And they want to make you a thing because they'll chip us next, and then we'll be forever connected to that.
Not going to happen.
No.
Can't be done.
Can't be done.
We have the solution to that.
Yeah, we do. See, if they were trying to force that on us, there's no way they can chip a living man or woman. So we'd have to do another episode with you explaining how to not be a dead legal entity and how to be a living man and woman, because they only have, because that's a fake law. It only has jurisdiction over entities. It doesn't have jurisdiction over the living. But if you consent to being the entity and you say, I am that, then they have jurisdiction over you.
Just screwed
you screw yourself. So that's a whole other discussion. But I also don't think that people will take the chip. I think that they will draw the line at a point.
Yes.
I do.
I agree. And I agree that we do have to do a part 2 to talk about this, because that is.
And I also want to add that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I do want to add that carrying a cell phone and being hooked up to that all the time, it's as good as being microchipped anyway. It's the same thing. It's still irradiating you constantly. It's still tracking you everywhere you go. It's the same thing. So if you don't like the idea of being chipped, then maybe you should stop carrying a tracking device.
Yeah, we already have driverless cars.
And they're always crashing.
All of the alleged humans that are driving those cars, they're just controlled by the smartphone. So really, it's just there's kind of a middleman there. More or less, the phones are controlling the cars now.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. But it doesn't have to be.
Nope. And that's great advice, great wisdom. Thank you both so much. I don't know that we need to extend this conversation because you've covered so much information. People's going to have to absorb it and let it sink in.
It's a lot.
It is, but it's really good information.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. And I really think that people need to visit your website, learn about Orgonite, learn about how to make it themselves, be their own co-creators to protect themselves and their livelihood and their families. And we'll move on. We'll go through this spiritual ascension in our bodies slowly, right here on Earth. We can do this. This is why we're here, to experience.
And there's a big first step. You have to reject the poison, the energetic poison, because you will never raise to that next level with it. And I don't, people think they can, but they can't. So they do have to reject the poison, just like they have to reject GMO food. It's just part of the deal.
And we give all the tools on our website, and I should actually spell that. It's THECHEMBOW.com. We've got all the links on there.
Yeah,
links
and
to
also
the blog, the YouTube channel, and we have an Orgonite store, and we offer our pieces for sale, and that's how we're able to continue providing all this information, is by the good grace of others.
Yeah. And also just check it out in depth. You know, I've got some articles on mind control so you can understand your part in this and how you can clean up your act. And because we all have to clean up our act. I had to do a lot of mental work to get to this point, and I still have a lot of work to do. And I've got a news section where I've archived all the amazing weather changes that have happened over the years. So just check it out and take some time, because it's taken years to put it all together. So it's not a quick journey to learn about orgone energy, but we do our best to make it comprehensive and put everything in one place for you.
Wonderful. Well, it is part of the life journey and the healing journey. So yeah, thank you so much for all your work, the work that you do, the message that you bring, the information that you have on your website that you've coordinated, and in your next steps. Do you want to talk about anything that's coming up?
Well, I'm working on my book. I've been trying to get it done. It's a lot of work, because what ends up happening is I learn something new and have to change stuff. So I've been working on it for a couple of years, and my hope is to have it done this spring. The book will be an explanation of how all this works, where we're at today, what we've figured out, and there will be a whole section that's all about our field work. So I can show exactly what we've done and what's happened. So with this book, I'm hoping that people can understand the energetic war in more depth, and have a resource that they can go to so that they can do what we've done. So that's what I've been working on lately.
Okay, Gabe, anything?
What have I been working on? My golf swing. No.
We're reading the Bible. We started reading the Bible.
That's beyond hope.
How about the Bible? That's a big one.
Yeah, we have been reading passages and trying to just really, any help that we can get into understanding the state of the planet and the state of humanity
and how we got here.
Yeah, how it came to be and where it's going.
Right.
Because we're just dealing with the crazy events of this world as they unfold, and just hoping that people will, I'm going to say it again, stop using the smartphones.
Right. You have to stop.
Okay. That's a great message.
Yeah.
Great message.
It's quite simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, but it is.
And I thank you for letting us say that like 25 times on your show.
It does take a couple times to get to sink in, as they say. Thank you for doing that. And thank you all for listening. We will have part 2 with Sharon and Gabe coming up later. And until then, lots of love.
Thank you.
Thanks.